Well, welcome back again, Realty Pros. As we said, today we are talking about listings. We've been talking about listings for a while now, and today is going to be no different. COVID has had such an amazing impact on the real estate market. We want to make sure that we are all very well equipped in handling listings. So there are going to be a number of topics that you're going to have to address with your seller. There are going to be some questions that I'm sure that each of you have had as well, and then some unique circumstances that you face on the listing side. So today we're going to just pull some of the layers back a little bit more so that you're able to deal with those things, so that you're very adept in the things that you're going to face as a listing agent. Okay, so this, just like all of our trainings, is going to be interactive. So I'm going to pull on various of you that I know who have listings that are current, that are coming on the market, or that you've just settled, to make sure that you can add your supply to the conversation, because it's exciting on my end, because I get to see all of the various situations that you guys face, and you would laugh if you heard things from your colleagues that they've gone through. It's really helpful to know that, hey, you're not, the only one that's facing, the obstacles that are normal to overcome as a listing agent. So let's just talk a little bit about preparing your home, or you're helping your client to prepare their home for the market. Do you have a listing that's coming up and it's pretty much move-in ready, but there are a couple of things that the client needs to do? I want to kind of steer us in the direction of this COVID market, because there is so much demand. The supply is very low. Inventory has been low for a while, which is excellent for the real estate market, because it means that prices of the houses continue to climb. And as a listing agent, your sellers are going to be able to get multiple offers on their home. And if their home shows well enough, multiple overpriced offers on their home. So let's just talk a little bit about, from the beginning, when you're helping your seller to prepare the home for the market. I'm going to throw this out there for you guys. What's the first advice that you give to your sellers when they're preparing their home to be marketed?
Declutter.
Absolutely.
First thing is for them to sign off on them agency document.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's definitely first, and hopefully by this time they've done that. That's primary. They need to sign those. So decluttering, that is something that is extremely important. Talk me through that. When you say decluttering, Katrina, what have you seen?
Just getting the home ready so that, when prospective buyers, walk through, they're not seeing clothes all over the place, can barely walk through rooms because it's not staged well, and they can't really see the flow of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So
definitely. Decluttering is one of the most important things that they can do. Right. Does anybody have anything else? What's next? What do you guys say?
I like to tell them to make sure everything looks as clean and as fresh as possible. It should be move-in ready. It should look as if it's move-in ready. It should look as if it's new. If it's fresh, that will work. But it definitely needs to be just as clean as you could possibly make it, and without any glaring errors, if you get my drift. Like, you shouldn't have doors that look like somebody's shoe went through it, or walls with that kind of issue, or draperies that have holes in them, or things like that. And make sure that it's well lit. Light bulbs all should be in, at least enough so that you can see the spaces, and that the power is on.
Those are some very good recommendations, Steve.
I've been through places where I couldn't see anything.
Who among us appreciates going to a listing with the power on?
Oh, wow.
I was just in one a couple of days ago. I was like, oh, well, I can't even tell if any of this stuff works. I can't see.
I've been in a few that I needed to have a stick with me walking through.
Oh.
And it was at night with no power. Yeah, and it was creepy. Stuff everywhere. Yeah. But I did it.
See, Curtis, you're a man. For those of us ladies, I do not recommend you going to see a listing that does not have power at nighttime. Okay. And even when you go during the daytime, make sure you have a flashlight with you. You have a flashlight, your client has a flashlight, you have your phone as well. Okay.
Yeah, that flashlight will help in an emergency if somebody busts in on you.
Yeah. So just to keep the flow going, we said that decluttering is essential. After that, making sure that the house is spick and span. Absolutely. And then if there are any items of visible disrepair, you take care of those. And you even mentioned things such as holes in curtains and things like that, that'll be eyesores. Those things are extremely important. What else? So the seller's going to ask you, what else do I need to do? Because you're going to have, you know, when we look at the comps, you know how it is. You're going to see your low end comps, your mid range comps, and your high end comps. And the goal is going to be to have your listing to sell for as much as possible. So these items that we're dealing with now are going to help the buyer to have a great experience in the home. So what's next? What other questions have your sellers asked, and what have you addressed?
So I was asked, should I stage it or not? And I was like, staging always helps. And also sometimes it's easier for the prospective buyer to see a property when it's completely empty. And sometimes it's easier for them to see it when it's staged. So staging makes it more attractive, I think. But and the other thing is to know what you're going to leave and what you're going to take. So, I mean, like if you have mirrors on the wall that you want, then you should take them. If you want to leave them, then you can say that they convey. But those are the other things that I was asking whether we should stage or not.
Does anybody have any opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, you look at everything really from managing that seller's expectations. If the property is in some disrepair and they're fine with that, then just managing their expectation that if you don't want to do these kind of repairs, that now we're going to probably be negotiating or these things will pop up again.
Right.
For staging, it may not even be necessary depending on the price point of the property. Does it really have to be staged? If it's empty, are you going to get that money back? And then in this market too, more than likely, if it's priced right and you list, it should be under contract within a week. Yeah. So, you pay the money for the staging, you do all that staging, and, you probably didn't even really need to stage it. If you're,
smart.
6, 7, 800K and up, you might want to stage it, but, 200, 300 doesn't really need to be staged,
Okay, that's good advice. Thanks.
That's what I'm here for.
Another thing that I see, Ms. Porter, if I can say, is when people are looking at a home, people always also look at curb appeal. And when you pull up in front of a house, and a lot of times especially when people haven't lived in the home for a while, when you pull up in front of a house and the grass is all overgrown or it's trash in the yard, or it looks like the house has not had any care, or you come up and the screen door is hanging off and things of that nature, before a person even walks into the home, they already start making up their mind. Right. And even though I know it's a competitive market, and people, when they get in, as long as everything looks good, that can change it. But still, I think some people just even drive past it. I'm not even going to stop because it doesn't look like anything that I'd be interested in. And then the second thing is, when you walk into the home, if you've had pets or you've had anything and the house has not been opened, and you walk into the house and that smell hits you, that's a complete turn off. So I would tell people to make sure that if you had pets or whatever, try to do some deodorizing, try to make sure you've maybe have the humidifier in there to get the dampness or whatever, because if your house hasn't been opened and it's been cold and everything, that can really make a difference in what you can get as far as people being interested in your property.
That's very true. I had clients with me over the weekend, and they went past the property before I could catch up to them at the property. They said, let's go to the next one. I don't like the way this looks. They didn't even want to go in. So, yep.
Those are some very good pointers. So there are various of our agents on here that you might feel like, well, I haven't necessarily had a listing yet. I want for you to be encouraged in this conversation because as a buyer's agent, you know what makes your buyer tick. So we're encouraging each of you to list, but even if you're going out with buyers, you know absolutely what those homes are, you know, what the draw is for those homes that your buyers are like, I must write an offer on this house. So we're taking those things into consideration because we could just go through the material because we have all that information in our listing presentation, but I really want to pull those practical things that you face on a daily basis so that when you're advising your seller, you know why, and you know those things that are going to drive multiple offers, because at the end of the day, that's what the goal is. The goal is to get your seller's house sold for the most in the least amount of time. Okay, so that's why all of these things are very critical. Now, let me ask this question because you're going to get this question. You're going to have a listing, and like Dee and I were talking about in the beginning, when you look at any set of comps, you're going to see both the low, the mid-range, and the high end of the comps, okay? And you will have sellers that are going to ask, hey, should I renovate my home before I put my home on the market? Okay, so the question then becomes, and this is something we have conversations with sellers about all the time, what is that return on the investment? Right? Because every seller wants to get the high end of the comps, and that's great because we want them to get the most money for their property possible. However, you want to make sure that we don't have them putting out, you know, $60,000, $70,000 in renovations if it's only going to bump them up, you know, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in terms of equity. Right. You know what I mean? Now, if there's something that they can do that's $10,000 to add to it, and now that's going to get them back another $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, then that's a great investment. But we really got to be able to dissect what it is that they're saying that they want to do, because there's some things that are going to give you the bigger bang for your buck. Okay, so as we started, we're talking about those cosmetic items, if you will, or the things that are, you can see, the things that have a visual appeal, the things that smell and the light and the curb appeal and all those things. But now let's talk about which items they can address for the least amount of money if they don't have the ability to do, well, if it's not financially feasible or going to give them a better return on their investment to do a full renovation. What are some of those things that we've already said? Decluttering, we've already said make sure it's spick and span, but specifically if there are, and I have 3 things in mind just right offhand in terms of making the property show well on the inside. If you have a seller, the seller says, okay, well, I have about, you know, no more than $10,000 and I want to get the best return on my investment. What should I do?
One of the things I would say, Ms. Porter, is painting, flooring, and lighting.
Yep.
Excellent. Does anybody think anything differently?
Nope. Paint, floor, and light.
Does anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, if there's bathrooms, depending on the situation with the bathrooms, I think they said they had $10,000. Well, if you're short on bathrooms compared to the comps, if you have 1.5 baths, or if you have 2.5 baths, and you can extend that to 3.5, and that's what the top comps are. Well, if you spend 10 on a bathroom, you're definitely, you know, due to get 20 back out. That type of thing, and that could be proven in the listings. That type of thing is give you a guaranteed return as well, bathrooms, and also kitchen renovation.
Very good contributions there, guys. Everything that we've heard is excellent. Is there anywhere else that you can think about investing money? If your client says, okay, well, this is what I have, and I want to invest it somewhere that's going to give me a good return on my investment. So we've heard paint, we've heard carpet, we've heard great lighting. Now we've heard bathrooms. Is there anything else?
And he did say, Mr. Winbush did say kitchen renovation. So, you know, if you can do countertop, backsplash, you know, and if it's a light reno that you can do, then it's definitely well worth that.
Yeah, countertops, backsplash, and under cabinet lighting that just goes along.
So Jasmine, this is Angela. I have a few suggestions. Sometimes, you know, replacing appliances is something that you can do if you're budget allows. But I was also going to say, you know, in this market, if we're trying to do what's in our client's best interest, I have one listing where they had a huge open space, great room, window, door, everything, but there was no closet. This particular seller agreed to put a closet in there, making it a 5-bedroom as opposed to a 4, which is going to help when it comes to appraisal. So there's some small things that they can do that are necessary, however, can improve the value of the property.
Those are all great contributions, guys.
Mhm.
So here's the thing. We could have a seller to do any of those things, and it's going to improve their chances of receiving multiple offers. We could have them to do the higher end things, and it's going to give them a much higher return on their investment. So if we were to consider from the least expensive things to the most expensive things, the least expensive is going to be paint and carpet. Those things have a very good return on your investment in terms of, from the buyer's perspective, coming in the property and having a great experience, feeling like the property's moving ready to submit an offer. So from the buyer's perspective. From the appraiser's perspective, there are going to be things that are going to give the property a higher value. Those things are going to be your kitchens, your bathrooms, and your flooring type, and the other amenities. So if you had to kind of maneuver between those things, if the seller had a stricter budget, then I believe it's very wise to have them to pull from a couple of those areas. So clearly, if they go into the house and the house has a, brand new bathroom, brand new kitchen, but the carpet is black and the walls are all scuffed, then that's probably not going to be one that they're going to be overjoyed about. But if they go in there, the paint is nice and, clean or fresh, the carpet and flooring's nice and fresh, and the kitchen looks nice, then that's probably going to be the one that's going to be most attractive and get those offers. So if they're able to do the appliances, oftentimes sellers are able to get a new appliance package before they can do new countertops and cabinets. But a healthy mixture of those things is what I would advise there. Okay. Your kitchens and your bathrooms absolutely give the most return on the investment. After that, the flooring type, then the number of rooms, like you heard Angela say, the number of rooms. However, there's a slight variation, and Walt, you can speak to this because you've done appraisals as well. What we see with appraisers is your clients are going to get more credit for their above grade rooms, so their bedrooms and bathrooms, than they are for the ones in the basement. So here, yes. So you'll see on appraisal after appraisal, you may have a home that's a 6-bedroom home with 5.5 bathrooms. 4 of those bedrooms are above ground, 2 of them are below ground. 3 of those bedrooms are maybe above ground, and whatever portion are below ground, they're going to get a different return on the investment. So if we're talking about having them to add maybe walls and closets for them to have additional rooms, yes, it's going to add value. But then the question even becomes, well, where is that bedroom? Is it going to give them a true 5-bedroom that's going to, actually give them more value in their property, more equity from the appraisal standpoint, or just from the buyer standpoint, because the buyer can see how that 5th bedroom is going to be useful? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
So these are some excellent considerations to make, because you will have to give this type of advice to your seller. So then the question becomes, at what point do you advise your seller not to do any renovations to the property? Is there a point at which you'll say to your seller, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we just need to see what the highest and best value we can get to the property for the property in its current condition? What do you guys think?
I would say probably the speed of the seller. How fast do they need to get this property listed and under contract? You may not want to tinker around with home improvements or doing this or doing that, especially if you're not going to really get a good return on kind of kicking that money out. So if they're really pressed for time and need to move, then look, go ahead and tidy up the house and let's get this thing listed and, price it right and get on the market.
That is an excellent consideration. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, you also have to consider diminishing returns. on those type of things, because some projects that you venture into is going to trigger a response, a legal or what should I say, a local municipality response would be some things. If you start a project and then it would be considered a renovation or upgrade, then you're going to have to renovate all of the items that are pertinent to that particular time. So if you have a house that you're dealing with that's 2011 and you start a project in 2021, then you go from the 2011 code to the 2021 code, which might mean dual purpose breakers, arc fault circuit breakers, and things like that have to be added. If the municipality is involved and they see it, then your project could extend further than what you expected budget-wise. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was an excellent point.
Wow.
So let me ask from this perspective, Walt, if you could elaborate more. So what then would be considered a renovation that would trigger the new guidelines for whether it be 2021 versus a house that was built in 2004?
There was a house, I'll kind of give you an example. There's a house in DC that I went and looked at it, and they said, hey, can you just kind of give us an evaluation of what's going on? Then I said, whoa, pump the brakes. Don't do anything, because they wanted to do a few things. And I said, don't do anything. And they were going to start on the kitchen. Then I was like, if you start on the kitchen, and particularly in DC, this municipality is very strict. They would come in and you'd have to do so much more. And even when budgeting your projects, we have even an in-house 203K that I'm looking at right now. Even when budgeting your project, some of the things that come up and they say, okay, we want to do these things. And then when the permits office or the local municipality comes in, they say, oh, you have to do these things. You have to change those, move those lights this way, because you have to bring it up. And then you only budgeted $12,000. And the add-ons, because they won't let you close the walls or they won't let you finish the project until you've actually spent $20,000. And if you don't understand those dynamics in the municipality that you're in, then you're subject to budget overages. And that's when you run into diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
That was an excellent point to add. I want to make sure that we clarify which things are going to trigger those regulations and count as renovations, so that when we're talking to our sellers, because there's some things that are going to be done structurally that will trigger that, exactly like Walt's saying. But then there's some things such as paint that will not trigger them to have to update anything else. There's some things as, buying new appliances, which is absolutely going to give a return on investment for the property, but that's not going to trigger them to have to update like the whole electrical system. You know what I mean? New carpet won't trigger them to have to update everything. But Walt, if you can speak to which things, once they touch, now they are
I'll give you a simple one. And also, and later on, I did some research on what are the problems that happen the most. Well, they're electrical, one, and plumbing, two, because of these reasons that we talk about. We have very expensive homes where the jacuzzi didn't work, the microwave was wired improperly to the garbage disposal. You turn the garbage disposal on, the microwave comes on, these type of things. And so one of the things specifically to your question is this: if you want to change your chandelier and put new carpet in, and paint, that's fantastic. Everything looks good. The lighting looks good. You're matching everything up good. That's great. And another thing is you can take the wall, the switch covers and the outlet covers and make them brass on top of the paint and the carpet. It makes it look like $1 million. Now, if you decide to put recessed lights in, if you want to put recessed lights in, that's where you just run into something, because now they're going to come in and look at the electrical. They may make you go to the panel and change these things. They're dual purpose breakers now. There should be a GFCI on the dishwasher, which wasn't there. That's a dedicated circuit. So that's a simple thing that can trigger changes.
That was excellent contribution. Thank you for clarifying that.
Would it be safe to say, Walt, that like basically if we're looking at pulling a permit, if we have to do any type of potential permit pull, that's when it's kind of the full stop of like, all right, look, if we go ahead and put a hole in this wall, it's been permitted, or we have to pull a permit, that's when essentially somebody can come out and inspect. But if you're doing essentially kind of basic updating, like an appliance, paint, whatnot, nobody's going to catch wind of it. Nobody would really know.
No,
I
agree with you 100%, but there's and so you're actually right on point, but I want to just slide to the side. You're on point, you're correct, but it's such a tight window. Let's just take a half a step over and someone misses the point, like this simple example that we just made. Okay. And so now what happens is, so no permits were pulled. So I didn't hear you say, well, we're going to just do this and not pull the permits. Where you should pull the permits, I have to sit here and say you should pull the permits. So, but that's not what you said. So let's just say you're correct. If someone's just changing an appliance or something like that, that's excellent. You don't need it. But that simple changing the chandelier as opposed to putting reset lights in. Okay. And so let's just say you didn't pull the permits, and then something goes wrong somewhere or whatever. I've had the municipalities call me and have people say they're going to tear my deck down. I've seen it. I've been there. And then also I'll say this, if you look and a person is doing an appraisal, and as he's doing the appraisal, he sees in the public record that there's an unfinished basement with 2 1/2 baths above grade. And then he goes to the house and there's a finished basement with a full bath below grade. It depends on the scenario. If he brings that to the attention of the office, of the local office, if he goes down to McCormick, Peppercorn in Prince George's County, and then they say, okay, well, we need to come out and evaluate that. That's not congruent with our records. And then they would say, okay, we have to take the walls apart and look and go in and do that. So you're subject to that. That's not what Curtis said, but just that thin line. If you cross that, you're subject to that. So it's best to know, and that's why I said, where are the diminishing returns? A good example is what we just talked about, and Curtis made a great example, is how to cautiously proceed and know that you're correct. And then once again, it's just like project management fundamentals. Sometimes you just have to refuse, or risk management. Sometimes you just have to refuse it and say, no, just leave it the way it is. That's okay too. That is very much okay too. There was a recent example where Jasmine, played hero ball on this, getting this one to its complete closure and everything. And what happened, and this place was built in the 40s, and no renovations had been made throughout the time. The lady this is my house, and she just lived in her house. And so we did nothing to that, because if you started anything, you was going to have to do so much, everything to bring. So you just leave it alone. And it got an incredible appraisal, which is absolutely as good as you can for it to be nothing done in the house. So you have to make that assessment sometimes to say, just let bygones be bygones, let them buy it here. And maybe if it's a buyer, you can help them with the creativity as to what they can do. And with the seller, just show it as plain as you can, get everything out the way, and show sell the location, in the neighborhood amenities or something along those lines.
Excellent pointers there, Walt. So do you guys see why we're talking about how to advise the sellers? Because you will get these questions. And the question then becomes whether or not they want to take on the full renovation process. If they want to go through pulling permits, because if they're going to do a renovation, then they're supposed to pull permits. And that's the only way that we can advise them. But if they're talking about something cosmetic and they're talking about paint and carpet and switching out appliances, those things don't require them to pull renovations. But once they start doing things structurally, they must pull renovation. And then, just like Walter's saying, depending on when the house was built, they could very well be opening themselves up for being subject to new guidelines that they wouldn't have been had they not touched those structural items, or mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and so forth and so on. Okay.
Yep.
So if they have just, a few $1,000s and they say, okay, this is what I want to do, paint pops very well, fresh, clean carpet, fresh, clean house, decluttering, those appliances there. But and Curtis made a really good point. He said that the selling time frame as well. How quickly do they need to sell? Another thing to consider is the diligence of your seller. Are you working with somebody that, is adept at pulling together a team to do a renovation? You know, maybe that's an investor and they do it all the time. Or is this somebody that it actually took them 6 months to get geared up to put it on the market? Maybe you talked to them, you know, you signed with them a year ago and it took them, you know, 6 months to get it ready to put on the market. And if they're talking about doing a renovation, you know, that may potentially be another 6 months before, you know, they're ready. So we've got to consider all of these factors so that when you're giving that advice to your seller, it's something in their best interest there and not simply something they'll look back at, you know, 3 months later or after the sale and say, I really wish that, you know, I hadn't done that. Shay and I had a situation where we were working with an investor and he did a complete renovation on the home. And, you know, this home was in DC. He had to do quite a number of things. By the time he got to the table, I think his return was probably maybe $1,000 or $1,500 or something like that, something crazy. Yeah, we were on the buying side of the transaction and he was the seller. So it was something that he didn't think through very well. When you start doing that full renovation, you know, you're going to open yourself up to a number of things, which we found in the inspection that needed to be addressed. There are quite a number of things from, you know, like Walter was saying, as it pertains to codes and guidelines that are different now than they were then. And you always have to have a budget for miscellaneous items because it seems almost inevitable that something that is going to come up that wasn't necessarily considered beforehand. So those are the things that you consider. So to that end, for many of our sellers, it is going to be better for them to sell their home for the highest and best value now with doing those cosmetic things that will not require a full renovation. Okay. So we talked about what those things look like. If it's something that they could, you know, spruce up a room and add some decor, add a little bit of staging elements, those things create a very positive experience for the buyer. And as we know, the buyers are the ones that are going to set the value for the property. So as much as possible, you want to make sure that that buyer has a great experience walking through the property. You know, they can't see behind the walls as of yet. They don't know, you know, the difference between the electrical system that's 2021 versus one that was guidelines for 2015, whatever the case is. So that's not why they're making their decision to buy their home. They're making the decision based on the home meeting their needs, it being move-in ready, and all of these things. So have your seller to focus on the things that are going to attract the buyer immediately without having to overextend themselves to do something that they may not be equipped to take on. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
And then another aspect of that, guys, is as it pertains to your sellers doing a complete renovation to the property, that's more research that'll need to be done on their part. And we can talk about that. If you do have a seller that says, well, I'm absolutely going to renovate the property, then you want to make sure they know that it won't be a dollar for dollar return on their investment. Okay, the things that are going to give them the biggest bang for their buck, we've said a number of times, the kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, you know what I mean? And those luxury upgrades, you know, but I don't want them to have the expectation that it's going to be a dollar for a dollar or multiplied return on their investment. So let's have those conversations and let's advise them accordingly so that you can sell their property for the most money in the least amount of time with the least headache. Does anybody have any questions about that? All right. So then next, you guys. So next, let's talk about the appraisal aspect. Let's talk about, and Walt, you've done appraisals, you have a license there as well. What things can we advise our sellers if there's anything that they need to pay attention to so that they will not have an issue with lender required repairs coming back from the appraisal?
Well, if you're selling your house, there's a couple things. One, and make sure there's no stains on the ceiling. Okay. And so if you're seller, make sure there's no stains on the ceiling. A couple things will happen with that is if they just see what is perceived to be a stain and they don't know, many of them don't know. And it could be an old stain or what have you. Then what you do is there's something called kilts and it covers stains. oftentimes you'll run a coat of paint over the stain over it, and it looks good when it's wet, and then the stain comes through. It takes multiple coats. So kilts block stains. So if you have a repair that's a toilet leaked and now it's a new wax ring, everything's okay, make sure you put kilts over the area where the stain was. No stains, because what happens is he's going to put that on the report, and it says, I have to come back and do another appraisal. It costs the person another $500. It could be a person that's on a budget. Well, I don't know anybody that's not on a budget, but and they just don't want to go further into their budget. But then that would trigger another appraisal, because he has to come back and he's going to charge you the full price again. So make sure you cover that up, and make sure there's no drips or leaks as he walks by the faucets and all, because the appraisers now, they take pictures of the entire house. And if they take a picture of the kitchen and it's dripping, or they take the picture of floor to ceiling and then the ceiling has stains, you just created a scenario that you didn't have to.
That is great insight. Thank you for pointing those things out,
You
Walt.
push your closing date out, and nowadays with the rates not being stable, it can break your lock on your loan or what have you. So you just something simple like that. Those two things, make sure take care of.
That's a big deal, and you could avoid quite a bit of headache with just giving them that advice. I'm going to share with you guys a video. So Walt did a video presentation for us before, and we'll have them to go through the actual training things that we'll advise our sellers of before they actually put the home on the market. But that was a very good piece. I would be remiss if I did not talk about the short sale aspect. So when you guys were going through listing types, there's going to be the short sale aspect, which will have a different line of guidance or a different line of the line of advising than what it is that we're talking about now. Your short sale aspect of your distressed home, your pre-foreclosure, whatever have you, that is going to be a little bit different than your standard sale. Because with your standard sale, your goal is going to be to, maximize the profit, and you do the same thing for both. However, with your short sale, your seller is not going to receive proceeds back from the sale. So if your seller is not receiving proceeds back from the sale, and it is also contingent upon the third party approval, then you're not going to advise your seller to buy new appliances. You're not going to advise your seller to put a fresh coat of paint, new carpet, and, give those minor or major upgrades depending on what their desire is. In a short sale situation, that's going to be very different. Because your short sale, your seller is going to sell the property the way that it is. Of course, they want to make sure that it's decluttered and it's clean. But in terms of those things, you don't need to make improvements, because the seller is not receiving a return back on their investment at all. In fact, they don't get proceeds from the sale. So to that end, that's a very different conversation for your short sale seller. I'll say it again, advise them that they do not need to make the improvements to the property, because whatever those concerns are, it's already going to be seen in the pricing of the property. And that's why your short sales are going to sell for a little bit less than the standard sale market value. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yes, Ms. Porter, I have a question.
Okay.
So with the short sale, okay, so I can understand you're not doing any of the cosmetic things because you're not going to get anything back. But what about things that are kind of foundational, like plumbing, electrical, heating and air, and things of that nature? Would you suggest that you do anything with that because of inspection, or would you leave that alone as well?
So that's a very good question. And as it pertains to your short sales, that seller, because that seller is not getting a return on their investment, the buyer's buying the home as is. So as long as there's no issue with the lender required repairs, and even when they are with the short sale, it's understood that the seller of the short sale is, it's the third party approval from the bank. So the actual individual owner themselves, they're not on the hook for those repairs. Mr. Porter, I see that you unmuted yourself. Did you want to add something there? Okay, we'll continue. When you want to add something, go ahead and jump right in. Did that make sense, Kerman?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got it. Let's see.
Oh, and if I can say, Mr. Winbush,
I did go out and buy the kilt, and it worked perfectly. And it was $3, I think, for the can, and it saved me a whole lot. So thank you for that, because he gave me that advice, and I can tell you it worked 100%. Thank you.
Excellent. Another piece, guys, I want to make sure that we don't skip is we have a home warranty for our sellers. So because we're partnered with HWA, any seller who lists with Porterhouse, we can give them a free home warranty. And why is that so important? That's so important because as the listing agent, you get to give your seller repairs that are only going to cost them a trade call fee. And for sellers, the trade call fee for while they're listed is only $60. So if by chance you do have a concern, you can use this in any sale type. If the seller does have a concern with items of disrepair, whether it be electrical, plumbing, mechanical with regards to appliances or whatever the case is, have them to use their HWA home warranty, guys. They will really appreciate you for it because it does not require for them to pay for the warranty in advance, although they can absolutely pay for it at settlement and transfer it to the buyer. It's really going to save them a whole lot of money, and they will appreciate them simply listing with you because of the value that you add. We've had sellers that were able to get their HVAC systems repaired. You have AC, and then someone says something about Freon, and then it opens up this whole can of worms with whether or not they should repair the system, replace the system. And Walt, you can lead us in that discussion. But the mere fact that the home warranty company covered the Freon, and it was up to an unlimited amount. I'm not even sure if they gave them any pushback whatsoever, but that was a repair that could have potentially been thousands of dollars for the seller to have to take on or even replace themselves, but they were able to get that done through the home warranty. So for each one of your sellers, when you list with them, as much as possible, you want to encourage them that it's in their best interest to take the home warranty, even if just while listed with you. Okay. Is your audio working there, Mr. Porter? Let me see if I can.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Well, you took all my ideas, so I don't have anything to say at this moment.
All right, well, if you think of anything else, you just let us know. But does anybody have any questions with how the home warranty helps the sellers to make those repair items before the property even comes on the market, or even as a result of a home inspection?
Now, one thing I can say, Jasmine, just to kind of put a punctuation, I'm really excited about the home warranty aspect of it, because here's what it does, guys. I mean, you got to think. You're in the place, and then these people hire Walter to come out. Walter's going to find something wrong with the house, and now you have to talk about repairs, what type of repairs you want to do, and what's going to happen. And the way that Home Warranty of America works is that your client has this free warranty that they can look at the list of repairs that's being sent over from the buyer side, and they can decide how many $60 trade calls they want to spend in order to get some of these things remedied, which can hold your deal together and could prevent a whole lot of confusion in getting to closing. So it's really powerful to have a $60 trade call where you can really get a plumber to come in there and handle up to 2 things for the $60, or a appliance guy to come in there and handle 2 appliances, or electrical guy to come in there and handle 2 electrical situations per trade call. So that's $180 for something that could cost them thousands of dollars. And it's really, really a powerful thing for you to be able to give that to your sellers and say, hey, let's see what the report comes back and says, because if these things are an issue, here's the remedy for it. We're gonna have to spend about $200 and get stuff fixed.
That's wonderful. I had a question. I was thinking about that, and I was like, okay, so that's plumbing, electrical, HVAC, that, but it doesn't have anything to do with flooring, carpet, and countertops, paint. It doesn't have anything to do with those things. Is that correct?
No, not at all. Items of repair, not renovation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And those things are going to be right in your broker mint library. So go and familiarize yourself with them, share them with your seller as well, because everything we do, we want to make sure that we're adding value, and you want your seller to appreciate various aspects of choosing you to list their home. And that's something that's really going to save them a whole lot of money. And even when they're negotiating repairs, that can be something that can be a matter of consideration. If you have a seller, like Walter said, who isn't on a budget at this point, you know what I mean? So if you have a seller who's on a budget, they can even use the seller's coverage to consider the items that they're willing to address for the buyer, depending on those that are covered. So those are various ways to add value to your seller and make sure that you do everything you can to make sure that while they're selling the property for the most amount of money, they have the least amount of headache, and they're spending the least amount out of pocket that's not going to give them a great return on their investment. All right. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we've covered, or a question about something that we didn't get a chance to touch base on today? All right. Well, there's quite a bit of discussion that we're going to continue to have in this area. And I'm going to be pulling on you guys. As I said before, I wouldn't want to begin that next line of conversation now because it's 1:27, and I want to make sure that we can log on off here at 1:30. But if there's any question that you guys have about a listing that maybe you're addressing something about preparing the property for the market, or what types of renovations or repairs, or how to advise your sellers, the floor is yours. Or if you have any comments on anything that you've heard us say today.
I have a quick comment, and it's very simple. And I think this would be the word of the day and to carry it on through the rest of the year. Less is more, and addition by subtraction. And so if you take that concept forward, an example that Mr. Porter, because we're such short in time, talked about a home warranty, a person can choose, instead of saying, I'll do these particular things to get ready, they can just do the warranty and then have the few calls, even if it's 3, and that's 60 times 3, as opposed to trying to do all of these things that might impress. And the other person has their own mind as to what they're going to do with the house anyway. So you take the lesser route, and then you end up getting more back out of it, because you can say, okay, I can do these repairs that the inspector identifies, as opposed to trying to be proactive and appease somebody that has a different taste than what you're putting together anyway.
One other thing, and that's awesome. Well, Jasmine, one of the things that I say, and I heard everybody earlier when my audio wasn't working, talking about things that we can do in the house. But one of the most powerful things is what I heard Dee say. You can take a person to a house, and if the curb appeal is not right, they're going to keep on driving. They're not even going to want to see what's in the house. So having your client do something simple as cutting the grass or picking some trash up outside. We had a situation where we were flipping a house one time, and the kids next door, they would come hang out, sit on the cars and everything. And just kind of made, an uninviting experience for people who were, potentially going to purchase the home. So we just had a conversation with them and simply asked them if they wouldn't mind, while we were selling the house, not hanging out in front of the house and doing all the kind of things they were doing. And they were very happy to oblige us because of the way we approached them. And that's something that maybe if they know the neighbors, that's something that they might not even pay attention to, but it's just something to be aware of. That curb appeal and the way people feel when they drive into that community is very important.
Very much so. I'll second both of those things. And thank you guys for adding those. So as we close out today, if you guys need anything, give us a call, text us. We're here. We're available for you. This video will be uploaded, the other ones as well. I should have the last few videos uploaded for everybody by tomorrow. Make sure that you log on to Porterhouse International Realty Group on YouTube, because all of your videos are there. Look back at some of those past videos. We've had quite a number of conversations and trainings on topics that you can probably have one to watch every day of the next few months if you'd like. But just go back and listen to these conversations, because it's really going to help you with the discussions you're going to have with your sellers, guys. All right. and we will see you guys. We'll see you soon. Have a productive rest of the day, everybody.
Have a great day.